Well, it's time now for Media Watch. James Tweeden is with us in the studio. Good to see you, James.
Likewise, Laura.
And we're talking about our top story, which is another tragedy. It seems every day we're reporting these horrible, terrible tragedies. A boat with an estimated 950 people, men, women and children, in the Mediterranean sank. Less than 30 people were saved.
Right.
So we can only imagine what happened to everyone else. Not many bodies found either. We're going to start with the press reaction to what is the worst death toll in this crisis so far.
That's right. Well, the AFP agency has summed it up with this headline: Darkest day, disgrace, EU under media fire after migrant horror. Now, just to lift some of the examples they gave, Dagens Nyheter, which is a Swedish daily, said, "We cannot say never again," hundreds of times.
Well, it's every other day, literally,
happening, right? And they go on then to lift some reaction from Belgium's evening paper Le Soir. They say that EU leaders knew full well that there would be record deaths from African migrants this spring. Then they go on to describe it as waiting in front of an hourglass where each grain of sand that falls is another human life lost. And either due to blindness or cynicism, this waiting is essentially, you're trying to wait for a sufficient number of deaths to create the conditions for mobilisation. So they're saying, look, there is something quite cynical about this. It's like we're waiting for the disaster to reach epic proportions before political action will take place.
Well, I would say it's gone past that a long time ago.
That's right.
And to be fair to the EU, they did hold a meeting today and they have unveiled a list of proposals.
That's right.
With
It does seem
Federica
like
Mogherini saying, finally, we've woken up to the evils of people trafficking.
That's right.
But a lot of people are saying, why did we have to let so many people drown before we could get to that
in fact, a number of, just to keep with the front pages for another little while, Libération, as well as a number of other European newspapers, used the image of the Dead Sea as opposed to the Mediterranean Sea. You can see it there, la mer morte in Libération.
People talking about graveyard as well.
That's right, the imagery of a cemetery is being used as well. Il Fatto Quotidiano with the same allusion, Mar Morto, and also in Spain, in the Madrid-based Razón paper, Mar Muerto. So I think a lot of newsrooms saying, look, Mediterranean Sea, today it's in fact more like the Dead Sea.
Horrible.
So rather macabre stuff.
As I said, the EU has unveiled a few proposals. Some of them include destroying the smugglers' boats. I was talking to Rob Parsons about that a little earlier. Also, processing asylum claims a lot more quickly. But of course, the big need, and something they will be discussing at this emergency meeting on Thursday, is better funding for search and rescue, because that was drastically cut, and now it's pretty useless. And that's what the NGOs have been highlighting, isn't it?
Exactly, Amnesty International amongst others, and they've also been trying to highlight and find images and comparisons and metaphors to, I suppose, show how tragic this is. It was 103 years since the Titanic sank in the last number of days. In 2014, it was twice the number of deaths in the Titanic that died in the people drowned in the Mediterranean Sea.
That's a very powerful image, isn't it?
It is, and I think it reaches people on a cultural level. The message is kind of driven home. And here's another image from Amnesty: over 600 deaths due to migrants coming from Africa in 2013. It was over 3,400 in 2014. How many is it going to be in 2015? In other words, act now before the numbers continue to climb.
To talk about imagery as well, some cartoonists have been illustrating the tragedy as well, and you found quite a few doing the rounds today.
I think in some ways an image in cartoon form maybe strikes home harder than an opinion piece on occasion. And this image here, which was in a French regional paper, it contrasts the yachts that you'll often find in the Mediterranean Sea with these sinking ships. And what they're saying there is we need to clear the scene before the holiday season starts. So a certain form of blindness. This is Dilem, an Algerian cartoonist, and he has reimagined the European flag in the form of starfish at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. And what he's saying there is the African youth dream of Europe. And indeed, a lot of the problem is, I think, this notion that coming to Europe will resolve all of...
with gold.
Exactly. The streets are paved with gold. So it's that illusion in some senses as well that is driving people to take the risks that they're taking. And here you see a very cynical European representative there saying it is too dangerous, you're going to die. But what it's of course inferring there is that there's a lot of inaction as these sort of coffin ships are on the verge of sinking. This is Plantu for Le Monde. That's a cartoon from last week, but again it's being recycled, I suppose, today because it's as relevant as ever. Indifference, and you can see people throwing sort of a laurel wreath to the sea. This one is an allusion to the policy of chosen immigration that Nicolas Sarkozy, amongst others, commentators have sort of spoken of saying, do you have degrees? Now, I suppose from a certain point of view, streamlining or managing immigration is a necessity, but I think what they're pointing to here is you can't ignore the problem of people getting on boats.
Humans are humans.
Absolutely.
Diplomas or not.
I think this one sums it up best in terms of the criticism that you're seeing across the EU press for European press, rather, for EU inaction. And there you have the Grim Reaper with, I suppose, the carrot on the stick there being the European flag. And I suppose that's also a reference to this notion of the El Dorado, the European promised land that is bringing people to take, or that is getting people to take these risks as well. So it's a many-sided, multifaceted problem. And cartoonists trying to sum it up, Laura.
It's a very sad story, and I fear this won't be the last time we talk about it. James, thank you very much indeed. James Creedon there.